Hello and welcome to the third space, a place where conversations go beyond the obvious and we strive to listen with intent and honesty, a place where we listen to stories, ideas, narratives, and inspirations that shape who we are. There are architects who design structures and buildings, and then there are architects who design meanings. My guest belongs to the latter. Please welcome Sourabh Gupta here, who designs for places to reflect within, for us to pause. It is a pleasure to have you here, Saurabh. Thank you so much for making time for us today.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Saurabh, I always start with asking this one question, which is a common thread in all my podcast conversations so far. Tell me something about your childhood, your formative years. There must have been some trigger that pushed you towards design and architecture.
Right. So I think my father is an engineer, and he would always go to these construction sites, and I think I did go with him in a few. And my mother was an artist, so I was constantly also seeing her with her painting, and both of them really appealed to me.
Wow.
And it was really interesting because as you were growing, you were always also looking at what's your bent and where you stand and what's your position there. And I think I could never make that decision because both were really interesting. And so when I kind of got exposed to a little bit of design and architecture, interiors to be honest, because my sister was studying, I really thought that's the sweet spot.
Wow.
And I think that's somewhere where that decision, that real turning point happened that, yeah, architecture is something I would like to give it a shot at. But even earlier, way before that, I remember two things that totally told me that I'm somebody who's a brick and mortar person, somebody who likes to do these things. I'm a super fan of Lego. I play
I
with
was
Lego
just going to ask you, did you play with building blocks or did
all
you
the time, all the
really?
time.
Do
Yeah,
you
yeah.
still do?
Absolutely. I still have a Lego on my table in the office now. You give me a Lego set and I'm gone for a few hours. And that's a gift I still get on my birthdays from
Aw.
people because yeah, it's just so fascinating and you can just keep doing so much.
Wow.
So that's one that's a very good trigger, and the other is that during my early days, childhood days, I used to make these cities with small pieces of marble because in those days, marble used to get chipped. You didn't have cutting machines. And so you had small pieces of marble as wastage. I would pick it up and start making houses and cities and build with that. And that was very fascinating for me. So, and it was almost at a city scale because you would make 100 houses. So, you almost felt like an urban designer, I guess, at that time. And this is when I was 5, really.
That is so
So,
cute.
yeah. It was just really nice. So, as a reflection, I feel these two realities of me doing this myself with hands and looking at my parents. I felt architecture is that sweet spot which was doing art and technology at the same time.
I always feel that subconsciously we are always defined by our childhood, something or the other which defines our sensibilities. And you were lucky that you've had an artist as a mom, because I think that also gives you the sensibility to the way your work is. So, how did having an artist as a mom shape your sensibilities?
See, I'm pretty sure there have been influences, and having an engineer and an artist, the conversations on the dining table were beautiful. There was always space for creativity, there was always the space for the intangible. So I think I have been given an upbringing which is music, art, and a lot of exposure in terms of travel because both my parents like to travel. So we were really always doing that. And then reading, did a fair bit of reading early, because there was no television, there weren't any distractions, thankfully. So one could really follow their own path or their own calling. So I think that really helped. And the whole development of the artistic side, apart from your education, I think was really useful.
So, it was a very nice, holistic upbringing.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, it was very pure. I mean, you were into sports, you were into studies, and you would draw and play with colors and things like that. So it's super simple and very, very important.
And I think you and Malvika have given the same to your daughters.
Yeah, so I think we've tried to bring in sort of clean, composed realities to the house. I mean, I would love to say that we don't have a television in the house,
Wow.
and nobody really misses it.
So there's no TV in any room.
No, because then what do? You listen to music, you read books, and worst or best, you talk to each other, right? So kids need to know how to deal with themselves when they get bored. That they're not on these screens. Of course, a bit of the reality got mixed and messed because of COVID, because then you had to have internet and laptops into their house, into their lives.
Yeah.
But still, just the fact that no bedrooms, no living rooms have televisions, there is no TV as an option as an everyday life, I think is beautiful, because now nobody likes it. Nobody wants it. It's just not a gap anymore because that's the way we've lived. So it's something that's really worked.
I think that's amazing. It's very, very rare that I come across anybody who says they don't even have TV in any space of theirs.
None at all.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've designed homes where some people want a TV in every room. It's-
Yeah, and you can't blame them. It's
Yeah.
become so seductive. What you see is just so beautiful. People love to. But then you have obviously you're alone and you're consuming.
All the time.
Yeah, constantly. So I think it was something that brought me a lot of magic in my life. And when I kind of pushed out for it, I was given full support. So that's the way the house is now.
Beautiful,
Yeah, yeah,
beautiful.
yeah, it really
There's
works.
another gorgeous thing that I loved about what you said, that you found that your alma mater, you called it your temple. So how do you feel about that? Was it your mentors? Was it the space, or was it what you learned there? What was the reason you called it your temple?
I think it's a very good question because I don't just say it, I really live it.
I'm sure, yeah.
And first, to me, architecture and design is religion. It is the only religion I can follow. And it's brought everything that I have in my life. And so, what gave me this reality was my school, my college. So I've studied at SEPT in Ahmedabad, and also a part of it was in TU Delft in the Netherlands. It's a place called Bouwkund. Both these places, SEPT for sure, really became this place for me that gave me so much understanding of the world, which we did not have. You were coming out of your school, you were coming out from a very basic household and upbringing, which was fun but incredibly simple. And then you didn't know much about architecture then. Those days, of course, you were not half as knowledgeable by that age as you guys are now. Today's information is just insane, right?
Yeah.
And so when I saw the place, which was pure, I just heard Professor Chaya recently saying it's the best Indian architecture building on this in India, for him. And of course, that architecture influenced you. Then I had professors and teachers who had walked the talk. They had lived architecture. They had given up their green cards. They had given up their practices and careers to actually come and teach. So somehow that ecosystem had that absolute purity about it, and it gave you an ability, an opportunity for an even sharper calling. And so it was nothing short of a temple. And even to date, if there is a challenge in your head, whether creative, architectural, or a position taking that you really struggle in your everyday profession, honestly, I just need to close my eyes and think about the 6, 7 years you spent on campus, and somewhere you get the answer.
That calms you down also.
Totally.
And you keep going back. You do go for guest lectures.
Yeah, so luckily we're also building now in Ahmedabad and in Gujarat at large. So that keeps me on. Then you get called in SEPT, and it's just so nice. I
Yeah.
cannot imagine landing at the airport and not going to
Not
campus,
going.
even if
So
it is
your
for that
temple.
one coffee or a chai or to just meet a few friends. Luckily, you have your batchmates who are still there, who are teaching now. And yeah, it's a safe space. It's really that comfort space that also shows how things evolve, but how the soul remains intact. It's beautiful.
So do you find a difference between, as a, student body that you were then, and now when you go back, what kind of students do you get to see now? Is there a difference between the two generations as such?
So I think interestingly, we all feel that our times were very good and now things are going down. Yeah. But honestly speaking, my understanding of this current generation, my respect for this current generation is really high. They do not lack any motivation. They somehow have the courage. They have the camaraderie to be together. These were things we never had. We were scared. We were thinking of our future today all the time.
Because we were always on the fence, I think.
I
That
guess.
confidence was not there.
But see, for these, for professions like architecture, for careers where you need a lot of courage to be having that confidence to carry yourself, to carry your education, to have this self-motivated time to create where you don't have books to really read, and you didn't have any textbooks in architecture. I had not a single book of architecture to read really. I think that's where this generation is phenomenal. So to me, the energy I see, the passion I see, is really promising. So
Is
I'm,
much more than what our generation had, or
I wouldn't know how to compare. I think it's very unfair to both, but it's not bad. We're not in a bad space. The challenge is the quality of education getting imparted or the journey one needs to take them through because the numbers are just getting larger and larger. I can see a challenge there. But if you make me compare sitting having a cup of tea at campus and I try to imagine our life then and the life there now, I think it's pretty much out there. You might actually get better results because of the kind of kids you have.
that's very heartening to know.
Totally.
That our future generation is doing a great job, will do a great job. The conversation I had with you the other night, you were saying, wait for 15 years and you'll see great architecture coming up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
Totally. That's where I'm coming from because if today the only thing this generation really has to look out for is how to declutter their mind. I mean, they are being subject to so much.
the phone.
The imagery. I mean, you see the number of images you see in a day that you used to see in a lifetime.
So true.
So that's the declutter, that's the calming, that's the centering they need to figure themselves for. And I think we are in great hands.
Awesome. You're so passionate about student life and about, I mean, it's just what amazes me that besides creating these beautiful structures, you've taken to creating, inspiring, and creating these minds by opening the school. What was your thought process behind that? Did you see a gap or did you see a disconnect within design schools?
So, a couple of things that led me to this. One, we had a practice. My practice was about 10 to 12 years old. I had already moved into my own office. And I could see a little bit of stability in the way this practice would kind of pan out. I'm also somebody who likes to do different things. And I kind of figured that now, with this as my base as an architectural practice, I pretty much need to now build this on and just go on. And that wasn't too exciting for me. I always look for more. I like to do different things as a human being. That was one challenge. And the second challenge was that the kind of people you were working with, kind of people who you would hire, or the students who would come and intern, you constantly saw gaps. And anything and everything that I got as an architect that kept me really inspired, that kept me really motivated, is the exposure I got. The exposure by traveling, the exposure by meeting people who were worth their weight, by just completely experiencing a world that was very international, very large, and something that one could really pick for their own space. And I really thought there was a gap there in what India or what education has to offer for whatever reason. You can call it scale, you can call it capability for them. And so I thought that might as well do something about it than just keep crying about
Keep
it or
crying
cribbing
about
about
it,
it, you
yeah.
know. And it was almost, I always say when people say you have the courage to do something like this, I feel, I don't know if it's lack of fear or lack of understanding that, you're not scared. And so I said, let me give it a shot and let's explore if education, design education, is something that one could dabble with. And so I actually started it as a design exercise, as a fun exercise in itself, saying that let's research, let's play with the idea of what design can do and what design can do for the future and for the world. So I wasn't focused only on architecture and I was not focused on now. I was just looking at it as a larger design challenge.
So it's a global perspective that you looked
It
at.
is a very, and it was also a larger perspective where there was no rush. So the fact that there was no time constraint and there was no space constraint actually let me design my school in its physical, in its soft, in its emotional, in every which framework in my own pace. And that really helped us meet the right people, bring the right people together, and then be able to hopefully do the right thing which we thought. And so the design school started. And I also feel it's one of the best decisions I made. You know, if I have to pick two or three or four big decisions in my life, absolutely, just attempting education was really a good one.
It's such a, I mean, it's a challenging thing to do
Yeah.
as it is. And, what were the challenges that you faced? For example, getting the right compliances and all of that. I know your intent was
I mean, there
absolutely
were. I mean, obviously, I can. I always say I
hiccups.
can write a book on failures. I can write a book on the
I would love to
challenges.
know
You
more
know,
about that because,
totally. So,
yeah.
uh, in India, in any case, you know, everybody, you need to find that one reason to do. There are 99 not to do. So, there were all sorts of challenges one could think of. But for me, it was first trying to look at what we want to do, then figure out some baby steps towards it, and then finally say, okay, this is what design means to us, and this is what the world needs as design for future. And it just happens to be in India. What India brings is the fact that people are hungry, people are eager to learn, and we are fairly a large number. So, you know, we can make an impact. So, life through design, impact through design, I think these were the key realities that really attracted me. And so that's how we started. Of course, there were challenges. There are challenges every day, but that's all of us, right? But what keeps you going is when you see the results of your attempts and the seeds. It's fascinating. Again, not being from a design background, education background, and not even being everyday embedded in teaching. I don't. What I found really fascinating is that the people you start moving around with, the school of thought that you've kind of tried to bring in, people actually start thinking that way. People actually can say, okay, design can change the world. Design has to be good for society, great for planet. Design needs to make an impact. And I think that's really, really the most fascinating part. The biggest challenge always is the teachers. The biggest challenge is the mentors. You don't want information now. All information is available to us on the phones, on the computer, on the net, right? What you need is role models. What you need is mentors who've lived that dream or who've understood that reality. And that's what needs to inspire you. So the kids of today just need inspiration.
And how do you choose the right people to teach in your school?
So I have, I think, done the hard part of having a great team already, and now this great team really starts building up with more and more coming out. But yes, there are criterias. There are very stringent. It's far more difficult to enter the school to teach than to learn.
Oh,
So
wow.
students have an easier way to get into the design village, which the school is called.
Yeah.
Teachers know. So we have something called the white book. That white book is really the extract and the distillation of the entire philosophy of what you want to do. And that's almost like an examination you need to go through to be able to see how the young minds who want to inspire, who want to teach, are open to change, are open to adaptation. And if that calling broadly resonates with their calling in life,
Then they're the right fit.
so once that is aligned, I think then we've got a villager for life. And that's the real hardest part of the whole deal.
And how many years has it been with the school running?
So the school has just finished its 10th year. So it's really early ages.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I think this you need to see it in a quarter, which is 25 years. So I am in no rush. And we are all really being as patient as possible and just learning every day and making these small nudges.
And you've added different curriculums also, besides architecture and
So actually, right,
design.
the philosophy of the school is very simple. That it says, how can you make a silo decide a solution till you understand the problem first? So we actually cut through silos and say, you learn to design, you learn design, you learn to think differently. So we actually break away from typical silos of graphics or products or fashion or anything else. It's more about thinking differently, taking you through a journey and processes on how to open up your mind and to be thinking well and thinking differently. That's what the school is focused on. And then you can choose whatever silo you want. That's really a matter of personal choice or a matter of the project, the nature of project that you're working on.
So, one question, if one has to find Saurabh, is it in the village, in his office, with his Lego, or on the site,
Wow. So definitely not in the village.
or at home?
Well, that's the fourth.
I know.
So definitely not in the village. I don't spend too much time there
Really?
yet. Maybe that's the future. I would probably spend most time now on my desk with the Lego and with people, and a fair bit of time at site because I always say my core is still about seeing your ideas, your projects manifested. That whole idea of seeing it built, this larger than life reality that we live with as architects, is just so mesmerizing. It's so beautiful. It's so energizing that I love to go to site. So yes, sites are still a very big part of my time, but majority of my time actually ends up being sitting in my safe space and really trying to push boundaries.
Lovely. So, coming back to your office and your work, what drove you to open your own practice, to start, because that is also very challenging. It's not easy to get the right work and showcase what you really, really want to do. How did that happen?
Practice just happened to me. I don't think I schemed. In fact, now when I talk to my friends at SEPT, they say, yes, we always knew you were ambitious. I don't remember myself as an ambitious person who was going to open and launch a practice and, being able to reach a scale that we are working at right now. I really came from a very basic household. I remember when I came back from Ahmedabad, I was still studying, I was still finishing my research thesis that we are supposed to do. Uh, with that, I started with dabbling small works, typical interior works here and there, and then we were given an opportunity to do a competition. We won that competition. So I had actually started my practice. Archohm came overnight because I had to give a name to the office, and I had not become an architect then. I was still not I had not submitted my research thesis. So the first project was actually the DND, the Delhi Noida Connect, and there we were building on the riverbed. Funnily enough, the riverbed was not part of UP or Delhi, so it was not in any legislation to be built. So I never had to sign. And it was this crazy reality that by the time the project got developed, my architecture degree diploma at that time got done. And we were there. But then again, I was on a kinetic Honda, which was my little scooter in my school days, and that's all. I was alone trying to figure out things. So I remember whenever I had to go to site at DND, for example, I would actually take my kinetic, park it at my dad's office, take his car, and then go because you didn't want an architect looking like a nobody out there. You had
Scooter
to
pe aa rahe hain.
totally. I had to have a beard because I had to. You were just all of whatever 25 or 24, and so you had to be careful with that. So I had this long beard because I wanted to camouflage my age, didn't want to be taken for granted, and try to still make a start. So it really just happened, and you had to, of course, keep taking your chances. But I had a very good exposure because at that time I worked for a lot of Japanese companies and they were so precision oriented and they were so rigorous. So I think all the ideation and my drawing work, my drafting, my architectural office really started shaping up with that reality. And so, yeah, Arcom pretty much started overnight and then it was an easy start, but for everybody, this is extremely clear. It's an easy thing to start a practice. It's a very hard thing to sustain a
To
practice.
sustain it with the ethos that you believe in. I think that is the hardest part.
Yeah. So what happens nowadays very often is that people start young, people start their own practices because getting their first two projects is not that hard. The challenge is what you've just said, to keep your soul intact. And the challenge is now how to get your third and the fourth project. And that's when people fall into two possible traps. Either continuously do the same typology of work and, kind of not being able to get out of that little groove. And what that groove does really is the biggest problem with that grooving is that you don't reinvent yourself anymore. So you kind of keep doing that scale and because you are not paid as well, you have to sustain and survive. And the other route is even harder, where you start doing turnkey work. You start, taking larger things with the same client, and that again leaves very little to have your own inquiry in design.
Yeah.
And so sustaining a practice is really where the
Very
game
hard.
is, with your scale, with your with your calling, with your ethos absolutely sharp and intact. And I find that very fascinating. To me, that's my job at Archohm now, because we've got super good architects working together as a team and being able to take on projects. But
Anybody would give an arm and leg to work with you.
well,
Let me tell you that.
I think people in the office can have their own views as well. But yes, it's a fun place to work because we all are fairly academic and dreamers at one end, and then pragmatic and also delivering at the other. So yeah, it's a project in process to keep a practice alive. We completed 25 years this year. I still find it very young. I still find that we are just evolving, and this is really now my stepping stone to actually build. So, yeah, it's really just a
Wow.
process.
Congratulations on that too. I know you feel that, oh, 25 years is young, but that's a nice long time to actually have delivered what you have. And some of your interesting projects, like the Dilli Heart, it garnered such beautiful reviews. What was, when you got it at that point in time, what was your thought process? Because it was done for a public,
Yeah.
it was not something which is personal, it was at a larger scale. Then how do you put yourself out of the whole thing and imagine it for a larger community?
I think Delhi Heart was one of the turning points in my life. So maybe just before that, the one moment that architecture happened to me was when I had gone to this convent, La Tourette in south of France. This is done by Le Corbusier. And it was this one moment or one day when I really saw the power, felt the excitement of what architecture can do. And that really, I think, got me married to architecture for life, because it somehow showed the skill, the ability, the potential architecture has, and what one can really do with it as a tool. So when I got something like a Dilli Heart, it was a competition beyond us. We were invited because we had just done a couple of really small projects for Delhi tourism, and there were all these big names of big architects who were who've been practicing forever, and we were this wild card entry into the competition, and it was crazy because we also went crazy with our presentation and we gave it all. Long story short, we won the project. I think that day was a clear day where I felt, okay, now the practice is here to stay. Here now, finally, after 5 years, we were 5 years old as a practice then. I clearly remember it was that day when I figured, oh, okay, I will not need to shut shop. This is going to go on, and this project will give me enough to be able to build a practice out of it. Did not know it's going to take me 10 years. Did not know it was 7 actually. Did not know it was the hardest project I could ever do, because I'd never worked with public architecture. I'd never worked with the government. I was this naive young practice trying to give it all, and every second month, something or the other, which was way beyond your control, would change. And so the project became an important project, and suddenly there was elections, or there was a Commonwealth Games, or there was something else, and it would not feature. So it was really going through these curves while you had invested yourself completely.
Yeah.
I mean, as an architect, it's like completely getting married to a project and living it. So 7 years killed us, but also gave birth to a practice that could really take on from there. So it was a very beautiful and a very difficult way of learning something very big in how to build in this country.
Nice journey.
Yeah.
So, is there any one particular project up until now that is very dear to your heart, like something that you feel very passionately about?
Probably a little cliched, but I think our studio, our own studio, made a very big impact and a change in our practice. It came way too early. It came within the first 10 years of our practice. It almost happened to us accidentally. But then, you know, because it happened, and because at that time somehow we were riding this tide of just a lot of interesting work coming together, we were doing a lot of work in Libya at that time. And I had this massive opportunity of looking at an Indian architecture practice, working in Libya, and really building all scales of projects. And it was like almost every month for a week, I would spend my time there, etc. And that's when this fell into our domain, that let's have our own office space. But once we got it, we did not compromise. We built it the way we would like to. Every compromise or every challenge was actually taken as a design challenge, and we took it. If you come today, it still remains probably one of the worst real estate decisions one could make, with all kinds of industrial setups, religious institutions, slums, everything around it. But what it did was it really gave us a chance to position ourselves very well. It gave me a chance to exhibit what Indian architecture, contemporary Indian architecture should be. And it did two very powerful things for me. It gave me this beautiful filter of the kind of people who would work with me in the office as colleagues and the kind of people we would work for as clients.
Wow.
That one project, that one reality, our literal visiting card was a filter more than anything else. It centered ourselves at, okay, this is what we'd like to do and this is what we'd not like to do. And suddenly it was very clear the kind of work we'll do for the future. So it is one project that I would say completely triggered the practice and pivoted a big move.
So that was a defining moment in your life.
Absolutely, beyond doubt. Of course, after that, there have been a few more really interesting ones, but yeah, that's the way life is.
So normally what I've seen and what I know of, that architects love materials, and your work also speaks volumes with the kind of materials you use. So do you use materials as memory, or do you use them as a building block for your spaces?
Maybe I should just go back a bit to maybe tell you where my learning from this on this is particular thing. So when I was in Sept, it was a certain school of thought. You were working, you were in a place that Professor Doshi had made. You were working with students he had, and they were your teachers. You were being taught a certain way of thinking. It was interesting, but you were also kind of questioning this school of thought, that why this is a groove you need to get into, why you were married to exposed brickwork or exposed concrete, etc. So all that journey happened, and then I was in the Netherlands. And I was in Netherlands in 99, 97, 98, I remember. And that was the time Europe was peaking on architecture. Oma was like the big office. Kolas was all over the place. He was teaching at Baukund. We had the best of architects, even practicing today, debating whether it was a Peter Eisenman or it was Sana or any of these other really cool offices. I kept that 1 year of exposure. I kept thinking of schools of thought and trying to get my pulse on what is this school of thought at Baukund, at TU Delft. Did not come. I came back, and maybe in a couple of years from then is when I realized that not having a school of thought is also a school of thought. That's where it came to me that, okay, building a vocabulary, building a material palette doesn't necessarily become a mark of an architecture practice. An attitude can. So to me, it was always very interesting to be very versatile in choice making or playing with materials. So the material did not become important, the play of materials became important. So how I would always try to use 2 or 3 types of materials together was the key fun and exploration. Which 2 or 3 materials were not that critical. And that's how we tried to believe. And I think gradually we gravitated to this clarity that how contextual materiality really was most critical. How that material needs to speak, the emotion, the memory you're talking about, but how that material has to speak in that project, in that position.
Area. Yeah,
Exactly.
in that area.
I was having this conversation with somebody that IIM Ahmedabad was built in brick by Khan. He wasn't building with brick everywhere.
No.
Because at that time there was a sort of a recession. We were frugal. We were anyways not very rich at that time, but we were building this institute. Brick was a very cheap material. Labor was cheap. It was a way of getting a material which stood for the common man. Exactly how Corbusier looked at concrete at that time in Chandigarh, but this brick was a beautiful reality of why it spoke in Ahmedabad for that particular project. And that's why I love it when we can use that specific material for that specific domain. So playing with this most modern, at that time, membrane structures, this I'm talking in 20 years back, with stone masonry in a very contemporary way in a Delhi heart, or using almost like half a meter thick stone cobbles going down in the earth for carriageways around Tajganj were materials that then had a soul to that context and spoke a story of that area and that project. So I think that's something that really works beautifully for us. So material is key, but one material for the practice isn't.
Isn't, yeah. That's a very, very interesting thing, and that makes so much of sense. So today, if you come across a new material that is completely, let's say, constructed out of hopefully sustainable materials,
Yeah.
you're open to suggestions, you're open to experimenting with something which you've never done before.
I think that's a responsibility. It's not about being open, there is no option. You must. And like you said, as long as that material has a certain narrative, a certain gravitas, a certain quality, you can't identify with it. So architecture is permanent, is long lasting. So you need to look at every decision you make very seriously. So once you pick a material that you feel is a material for tomorrow, a new material at that, you test it against every condition that you really wanted to kind of go through. You must use it, and if it can speak of today's time, that's what architecture is meant to do. It has to be a reflection of today's times. So currently, there is so much exploration going on in the office because we're doing the New Delhi railway station, and we all understand that this has to stand 50 to 100 years. So, what do we use today that can withstand and also represent today's time? So, material is a key element to architecture, no doubt.
Indian architecture, we were speaking about responsibility of architects, and often we see that Indian architecture is influenced by nostalgia and also by the global changes that are happening and the materials that are being used not in India. Where do you see Indian architecture going?
I mean, you actually defined the story of my inquiry in architecture. I always keep saying that, neither the past nor the West. The answer lies in us, in our inquiry of what we feel is the contemporary Indian architecture if you're building in India. And that really needs to be answered by all of us through our experiences, our understanding of the world and of today, and then be able to make these extremely clear choices, serious choices, to be able to use form, material, systems that then get taken forward. So, totally. Building an arched building next to a mosque or a temple with domes and almost copying something is actually not respecting it but the lack of it. And I always say that we as architects need to understand that, align ourselves, and really go the next step of educating the client and then being able to do it. So that's fundamental, that today's architecture has to be today's. It can't be aping either. And that's an inquiry all of us should have. And that's our response as designers of what we feel is today's Indian architecture. If it can't assign itself that value that it's been built today, I think that's not doing justice.
Wow. And I think that's where your design village and the ethos is explained to the children, it's explained to the students so that they can be better designers, better architects of the future.
Absolutely. Think about it. All our tourism, most of our tourism is architecture across the world. Now, why does architecture become tourism? Because you can read and sense and experience architecture the way you want to. A textbook or a movie leads you towards something.
Right.
While you can experience architecture in your own way, you can interpret it in your own way. What does that mean? That simply means architecture is one of the purest testaments of culture, of society at that time. If it was industrial revolution, you had steel buildings coming up. You had old stone, you had arches at that time because that was a structural need to it. You had jack arches to today's format. So I think technology gives you material, time and culture give you the need and the program, the skill set. Today, machine is the king. You had craft and you had local labor in the past. So everything you will see, you can totally imagine how much the context of building in today's time and representing today is critical in design. And that's an obligation I think all of us as designers need to carry very, very successfully.
So, architecture is also called frozen music. And you just said that. And what would your soundtrack be?
Well, I think, like I said, our constant inquiry, our constant understanding of ourselves and the way we want to build is is changing. Maybe what I was building or what I was working with 5 years back or 10 years back is something I'm moving on from, because we all need to aspire to keep doing better. But I remember on our 15th year, which is 10 years back, we were in this position. We were celebrating our 15-year anniversary at Archohm, and we had Indian Ocean playing. And we had them playing live because I so resonated with their music that it was contemporary. It had the vibe of today's context, but it was also rooted very much in that Indian reality. And so that at then was really interesting. Personally, music that I would look at a level where I would say the rigor, the perseverance, the discipline of a Nusrat would be phenomenal. Wow. Or that flavor of this half English and Hindi language that we use with Gulzar's poetry would be something I would love to see in my work, that it has this connection and understanding and acceptance of our context and of our times, but also being relevant to today's audience.
I'm having such fun listening to you, Saurabh. Beautiful. So, if you had to leave a legacy behind, built or unbuilt, what would it be?
Wow. Haven't done too much soul searching to arrive at a very simple answer, but what I really wish today's practices do, what I really hope the young architects do, and I try to live that a lot because I see a lot of hope there, is we need to be open to change. We need to constantly learn, and we really need to play with this practice. So, at one end, we need to take ourselves very seriously because what we build completely outlasts us in life. So, it's very important that you don't build for 5 years, but you build for 50 and 100. So, you need to make these decisions very carefully. Absolutely, on the other end of the spectrum, you also need a certain degree of lightness to have fun and cheer in your work. You need to make the people using your projects, using your products smile, right? And that's where my biggest message, my biggest reality is in today's times. India is growing, India needs all the infrastructure. Independence, you had no choice but to build. But today, people, all young practices, everybody has a choice to build something glamorous, something people, private people, or to build for public. Somehow I feel there is an affinity towards going towards the glamour, the visuals. It's quicker, it's probably better because you can control it more, etc. But I really feel the power and the impact that public architecture can have is so important. So I really hope everybody tries to give it a shot, give it a chance. The one most clear message I can send, and this will almost be a shock, that you have your largest creative freedom in public projects.
It is a shock.
It's absolutely the truth that, and I've read this now because I've experienced it for the last 10 years. My practice does a lot of public work as well. And I have personally figured and seen that once you have got that larger framework, you've understood the client need, and you've understood that as long as you stay within budgets and time frames, the entire team, the entire paraphernalia is with you. They really give you the freedom and flexibility to create what you want to create. You just don't need to cross certain lines of time and budget. And that's really not that hard. And that's such a fair ask. So the kind of freedom to build what you want to build in terms of program and how to build is incredible. And then nothing on this planet can take away from the impact that project has. Because whatever you build in India gets consumed. That's not hard. And when it gets consumed in the way you thought it could, and when you see that change, nothing in this planet, nothing on this earth can change. You don't want to do any other profession. You don't want to do anything but that. I think that's the big difference. That's the excitement. That's the inspiration that I want all the practices to have. And I want them to experience this change. So they must not get scared or get bogged down from stories about how difficult it is to work with governments, I think they should all try. It's as glamorous, if not more. It's way more comforting and liberating as artists, as creative people. And of course, the legacy you leave is just obviously incredible.
Incredible.
So it's something that I would like to look at. So that's one thing I would want to leave. And second, I want to make really the statement of this super specialist that we've all tried to become, these architects for a school or an architects for an industry. I think we need to break these barriers. At Archohm, we design from the simplest of products and simplest of stationery to furniture to largest of buildings and parts of cities. We've got to cut that transition. You have to cross the silos. You've got to go beyond to keep yourself fresh. As soon as you start doing one typology again and again, by default, you either get repetitive or you kind of get bored by yourself. To keep yourself inspired, to keep yourself a learner, you need to constantly cross, go out of your comfort. I think that space where you don't panic but you're fairly out of your comfort is where the maximum learning and the maximum impact can come of thinking differently. I really hope people aspire for that. I really hope people can experience that. And hopefully, people can sense it with the kind of attempts we are making in our own way, whether it's in education, whether it's in various forms of anything creative across, in trying to make a change.
Amazing. I was going to ask you that, but you said it also beautifully. But if you had to leave one message for the youth, the ones who are just getting out of college, want to work under somebody, or they want to start out on their own, what would that one message be for them?
I mean, currently, it is patience. It's very easy to get lured by these quick wins. Architecture, like I said earlier, it's religion. It takes time. One has to really get into the groove. So, if they can have the patience and the perseverance to really sharpen themselves before jumping into this mad stage that we are all in, this mad race of a profession, I think that will be great. And nowadays, I think practices have evolved in the world. They've already in India, they are where you can make your own space within that practice. So you don't necessarily need to see your own practice as the final aim. What you need to see is what you can bring to the table. If you want to do projects of a certain scale or certain typology, you might as well collaborate. Problems of today are very complex. No more is star architects the rule. I think it's the team effort, it's the collaboration to be able to work together to bring a larger change. It is where change is the constant and system design needs to happen, and architecture really needs to work with your clients over a period of time, and it's not a finite product to be gifted out. I think those realities have changed. And if people can identify themselves with that, and I'm actually fairly sure that they will, we would be in a much better space. We really need to get out of this ambition as architects to be these stars with this one reality, one style. This whole idea of taste and style needs to be thrown out. I think it's overrated and it's somehow larger than life in our heads. I think the concept of restraint and responsibility is way more beautiful. How do I make this more sexy? I have no idea. But I think it needs to get cooler. And we will see this happening because the exposure people have today, they understand it's the way to go. Building simple is the hardest. So that's going to become the way of life. And I hope and I can see that moving on.
Thank you so much. I think I had a fantastic time listening to all your stories, your philosophies. To our listeners out there, I hope the takeaway is build contextually, stick to your ethos, and take risks and trust the process. This is the third space powered by FCML. Thank you. Until next time.